Hey guys, I am out in my backyard right now. I'm in sunny Florida. I want to make a short video on some of the benefits of going outside and getting some sunlight, give you more of a functional approach to functional health care. So let's talk about vitamin D. Most of us are deficient in vitamin D because most of us are not going outside. Those of us that are going outside, or most of us are using sunscreen, so we're blocking a lot of the health benefits when we are outside. Again, I'm not saying you need to bake out in the sun, but there is something to be said about going outside and getting out into the natural world. So without further ado, let's go into some of the benefits that I'm making right now in my body by being out here in the sun. Ultraviolet B light hits our skin and it interacts with the cholesterol in our skin to make vitamin D. And you may know or you may not know, but vitamin D is actually a pro-hormone, and it's not a vitamin per se. We think of it as a vitamin when it gets fortified in milk and other foods. So one of the amazing things about having enough vitamin D is vitamin D will actually go to the lungs and bind to these VDR, these vitamin D receptors, and then it releases antimicrobial peptides. You think of antimicrobial, you think of something like in a hospital to get rid of germs, and that's actually what it does. It releases these antimicrobial peptides in the lungs, and they are antifungal, antibacterial, and they're antiviral. These are defensins and cathelicidins, and these bind to the viruses, the fungal infections, and to the bacteria, and basically help protect you from getting sick. And another amazing thing that vitamin D does is, believe it or not, it actually helps with anxiety. And if you're deficient in vitamin D, there's a good chance you might have anxiety. You might have insomnia. You might even have a higher risk of seizures if you have a history of seizures. Vitamin D is very essential for making what's called GAD 1 and 2. And GAD 1 and 2, GAD stands for glutamate decarboxylase. Now, what in the world is that? So you have something in our brain called glutamate. And glutamate is the number one excitatory neurotransmitter in the brain. Now, glutamate is very fascinating because glutamate is yin and yang. When glutamate gets too high of a level, first of all, that could lead to extra electrical activity in the brain. It could lead to anxiety because of everything that's firing. And it could lead to potential seizures. It could certainly lead to insomnia because you have a lot of extra activity going on in the brain. Now, why it's yin and yang is it will convert itself into GABA when it gets too much. And GABA is the number one inhibitory neurotransmitter in the brain. So if you think of someone using alcohol, drugs, medications like your benzodiazepines, like Xanax, Ativan, those are targeting GABA. And GABA is what calms us down. And especially if you get triggered, you get a fight or flight kind of response, GABA is eventually going to help bring things down. Vitamin D is important because it's going into the nucleus of our cells and actually working as an epigenetic. It's activating genes to produce more of the GAD 1 and 2. And again, what is GAD 1 and 2? It's the glutamate decarboxylase. So what GAD does is it goes to glutamate and it does its job by removing a carboxyl group. So by doing that, glutamate turns into GABA. Now, if you don't have enough vitamin D, you're going to have lower amounts of GAD. The other thing that's super crucial for this conversion is vitamin B6. It's crucial. And again, if you're low in vitamin B6, you may have too much glutamate and not enough GABA. The other thing is magnesium. Magnesium is so essential for hundreds and hundreds of processes, but it is also important in this conversion. Now, imagine, for example, you're not going outside, you're not getting enough vitamin D, you have low levels of GAD 1 and 2, especially GAD 1, you're not eating very healthy, you may be eating a lot of ultra-processed foods and not getting enough B6, for example, and then you have anxiety, you have insomnia, you have maybe a racing heart rate and racing thoughts. Now, I'm not saying all of that is caused from this, but it is an avenue that could cause all of that. And maybe you go to a conventional physician, and more than likely, are they going to talk to you about, right, GAD 1 and 2? Are they going to talk to you about vitamin D? Are they going to talk to you about B6? Of course not. Not most of them. They're going to probably prescribe you a medication. And you have to understand these medications have long-term consequences. They have long-term risk. And just look up the risk of Alzheimer's when someone is using benzodiazepines for a long period of time. That is basically suppressing the central nervous system. And again, I'm not saying, right, don't take your medications if you're using medications for anxiety. I guess what I'm trying to elaborate is you may have a deficiency in vitamin D, because most of us do. So a short, easy way to know if you're going to make vitamin D being outside is by looking at your shadow. If your shadow is longer than your height, then you will not make vitamin D. And here in Florida, we can make vitamin D pretty much year round. Now, if I go out at 8 o'clock at night or 6 in the morning, I'm probably not going to be making vitamin D. But again, I look at my shadow and see if the shadow is my height or shorter, then I'm going to make vitamin D. And that has to do with the amount of the atmosphere that the sun, the ultraviolet B rays, are going through to get to my skin. And unfortunately, many people up north, let's say you're up above about the 32nd parallel. If you're up above Tennessee, there's not many months out of the year you're going to make vitamin D, even if you're out there at noon, because the sun is so low in the horizon, it's going through all that extra atmosphere. So even if you're out in your birthday suit, right, in Chicago, depending on the month, you may not make any vitamin D at all. And doctors even saw this when COVID came out. They were starting to give people 150-something thousand units of vitamin D, and it wasn't really making much of a difference at that point. But again, if you have enough vitamin D in the first place, you're beefing up your defenses against these viruses, the fungus, and the bacteria. And also, of course, helping with anxiety by making sure you're converting enough glutamate into GABA. Now, can you have these levels checked? Of course you can, if you can find a functional doctor or provider who's, aware of this stuff and actually looking at those labs for you. And again, I'm not saying I wouldn't prescribe a medication to help with anxiety. It's just that the educational part of that is so important, so people can start making some lifestyle changes for going outside and eating better to not need that medication at all. It seems like a lot of times we take medication and it's assumed that we're going to be on that medication for the rest of our entire lives, and I don't find that necessary at all. Not unless you have a very rare genetic condition where you're not making enough of an enzyme, or maybe you're breaking an enzyme down too much. But I think most of the time that is not the case. That's probably less than 1%. So another cool thing about going outside in the sun that I feel compelled to share is when you're outside, if you see the sunrise in the morning, that actually can reduce your cortisol level production for the day by about 25%. Now, cortisol is necessary to wake up and get going. But if we're inside too much in the morning and not going outside, then the body thinks, the sun hasn't risen yet. We need to start cranking out more cortisol to get the person up and actually go outside of the cave, right, and see the sun. So seeing the sun actually helps reduce the cortisol. Now, cortisol is essential for being conscious, right? But you don't want too much cortisol. It's one of the stress hormones. And too much cortisol, right, you can start having anxiety and things like that. The other really cool thing about going outside in the sun is that when you're outside, the sunlight hitting your eyes is actually causing you to make more serotonin. So you think of someone who has a low serotonin level, they go to the doctor, they're feeling depressed, they're getting antidepressant most of the time, right? Well, the idea is to raise the serotonin level. But what if you were going outside more and raising your serotonin level naturally? The sun hits these special cells in our eye that have nothing to do with vision. And they're really fascinating. But they send the, what is the name for them? They're the intrinsic photosensitive retinal ganglion cells. That's a mouthful. They detect sunlight, and then it sends a message through your internal clock, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which in turn is regulating your pineal gland. And when that's happening, the pineal gland is activating serotonin. So you feel good that day. Believe it or not, most of the serotonin we make is in our gut. But the issue is serotonin doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier. And so it's very important to go outside and make some serotonin yourself, because that serotonin is inside of the blood-brain barrier, meaning it's inside your brain. The other cool thing about that is when you can watch the sun set, and you do see the sunset and the light stops hitting your eyes, then the serotonin that was produced that day in your brain gets converted into melatonin. And we think of melatonin as the sleep hormone, if you will, that is helping our body get ready for sleep. It's all doing this all naturally. Your body, your mind, they were designed, right, to be in nature. And the more detached we are from nature, the more issues we're starting to see. Now you see people taking melatonin supplements. The issue is the melatonin you're making right from the serotonin is already right there in your brain. And also, even more important is your body knows exactly how much melatonin to make. And if you're taking a supplement, you're probably taking not enough, or you're probably taking way too much. And that could have effects on you, right? So again, going outside, there's actually studies, some studies are showing that the lower level of vitamin D we have, the higher risk of certain cancers. Now, again, I'm not saying you just lay outside all day in your birthday suit and get scorched. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying don't be afraid to go outside. With fair melanin levels, which is to say a fair complexion, right? I could probably make enough vitamin D for my body for the entire day, depending on the intensity, right, of the sun. But let's say it's noon in Florida. In the summer, I mean, it's probably 4 minutes, 5 minutes at most, just going outside. I don't have to take my shirt off or anything, just letting the sun hit my arms, my face, my neck. And that's not a whole lot of time. Now, if you have high levels of melanin, you're fairly dark complexion, then you need more time, of course, but it's not like hours. It might be 15 minutes, right? And again, this is just going outside in nature a little more and not being afraid of the things that our ancestors were doing for millennia. The health benefits of going outside in nature, and I could go on for hours. We'll make some more videos on nearly infrared light and the forest reflecting that light and all of the amazing things it does for our mitochondria inside of our body. We'll get into that for another video, but I hope this helps. And again, don't throw out your pills. But, you know, like Morpheus was telling Neo, when Neo says, you know, do you think I can dodge bullets? And Morpheus tells him, you know, there's going to be a time when you don't need to dodge bullets. Well, what if there's a time when you don't need to take pills? And again, I'm not saying throw all your pills away, but I'm saying if you get a good functional provider and they know about these things and they educate you on it, and you start taking a more right, active role with your own health, then maybe the discussion you'll have with your provider over time is, hey, let's wean down some of these pills and see if I really need them anymore, right? And we can go into more of that, how certain situations can actually lead to depression. We'll make a lot more videos. I'm just getting started with this channel, but if you like more of this content, then just like and subscribe, and we'll see where things go with everything. So thank you for watching.